It is Wednesday, and it is a special day today on Let's Get Real because today is actually officially our year anniversary. It was year today that we had our first Facebook Live podcast. And Nicole, how does that feel?
You know, when we started it, I was so looking forward to it. But I was nervous, having never done this. And I thought, I stepped over that fear. It's like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And here we are a year later. And not only has it been fun, it's been enlightening. I've learned so much. And the guests we've have on here bring just a wealth of knowledge to us. So not just the fact that we get to go live, we get to teach things. We have people that come in that can always learn, but I've learned too. And so that probably makes me happier than anything, is that I love to learn, I love to advance, and I love knowledge. So it's wonderful. Let's do it another year.
Consistently done it every single week and not missed one Wednesday. So that to me is what really counts in life, right?
Absolutely.
In everything we do. And I haven't been as consistent on other areas of my other lives and things like that, but at least in this area.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I'm that way also. I can really be consistent for a while. And it's like, okay, I'm bored. Really be consistent. Okay, not this. This is fun. This gives me something to look forward to on that hump day. So, it's always a party here, Glenda.
It's Winning Wednesdays, and it's all about winning in life. And that's what we're all about. So let me ask you a question. What would you do, or how would you manage if you had a child who had mental struggles? How would you cope? It's really something that, the average person never stops to think about this. Now, I think about it very much so because it's been my entire life, because I've lived up with this. But for the average person, nobody would even think in those ways. We take it for granted that our children are born with 2 hands, 2 legs, a normal, healthy mind, body, and soul, and you just never think of it. And isn't that a beautiful way to live? But is it real? Not always. So today we're going to be talking, and again, this is what the Let's Get Real is all about. We try to get real and bring down what reality is in life. Because you know what? Part of life is the reality of sometimes we fall, sometimes we get hurt, and hopefully the whole idea is we're here to empower you to rise and to keep on going, because we don't really have much of a choice of it, do we? The idea is to keep on going no matter what. So today we have a very special guest, and you'll love her because of her beautiful English accent, and she's just a delight to listen to. But here we're going to embark on a heartfelt journey of love, understanding, and empowerment. Join us in this powerful episode today as we delve into the unfiltered realities of parenthood and mental struggles. Today, we are going to meet Samina Razaque, a devoted mother educator who has took an unexpected turn when her own children faced mental health challenges. Witness how this pivotal moment became her catalyst for Samina's remarkable transformation as she delved into drug-free approaches to support her family and well-being. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, as we uncover the true essence of resilience, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond of family. It's time. Let's get real. Hello, Samina, and thank you so much for joining us today. It is such a pleasure, and I really was excited listening to this conversation today. Welcome, my dear.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, Nicole. So nice to meet you today. And congratulations. Happy birthday. 1 year.
I know.
That's so awesome. I mean, that just screams success, doesn't it? Consistency. And I love what you said, Nicole. It's fun. And I think that's really the key as well. When we can find something that's enjoyable and fun, we lean into it, our heart's in it, and it's all great.
Yes, absolutely. And this has been fun. This was a journey I spent time taking, but yet here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yes.
So we talked, as we talked about just in a moment ago about the realities that life comes to hit us. And, so many people, at the beginning part of their life, they're not hit with these type of realities. It's a different form of life that you have to face.
Mm.
And, we all have this, that we're going to have this Cinderella life where, everything is beautiful and, we have our man that's coming on his white horse, who's going to pick us up and take us away. And then we have beautiful children and it's all well.
Mm. And there's so much judgment there, isn't it, Glenda? Like that's the word that came to mind is, when you don't have that perfect life, or all of a sudden, your children are struggling or you're struggling, then it's like, well, what's going on there? And I guess that leads nicely onto my story is, there was I think we all have judgment, as we're growing up as women, we all have messaging about what we should be and what we shouldn't be, etc. But I think from my, cultural background, my parents were Pakistani. They came from, Pakistan, then, settled in the UK. I was born here. My children are obviously second generation. So, there's a world of difference between each of the generations, which is really interesting. But that messaging is there. And it really, for myself, it felt like, well, you're a teacher. So therefore, you should know how to raise your children. You should know, you're a teacher. Your kids should be successful, academically, spiritually, physically, emotionally, everything. Every ly that there is. And I remember being quite young and feeling very like, okay, well, actually they're not, or I'm not, and how do I do that? And I think all women around the world and all mums and dads, we can really sort of relate to that that feeling of, am I good enough? And no, I'm not. And let's hide it. Let's hide it and let's bury it down and let's, suppress it. And I guess it's that story sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Well, it Elsie sounds also very familiar to me because as you had children and you started having your difficulties, I was born into a family where the difficulties already were. So as you come into it in one phase, you imagine is growing up the youngest of four children, and I'm the little one who doesn't understand it, and I'm sort of shoved in, I'm recognized, but my needs aren't always met. So it's I totally understand what you're saying, because the feeling embarrassed, the going into into public where a child acts out and speaks and or does different behaviors that is not supposed to happen when you're in public and things like that. Yes, and especially in my day, and I say it in my day because I'm this is a new generation that is in my day. People who had any type of mental illnesses, special needs, were shunned down upon and pushed or put away, and so it wasn't accepted in society in those years.
In my culture and sort of background, it was like seen as, well, you just don't have faith. If you've got mental health issues and you're struggling, you've got low mood. I mean, I use the word low mood. It seems, because I generally work with teens now, they seem to like that word rather than depressed, because I guess depression is very sort of a medical, diagnosis, isn't it? But any of those feelings, like, why would you feel low when you have God? Why would you feel low when you have us? Why would you feel, down when you have everything? You look at the third world, look at people who are suffering around the world, etc., etc. And sometimes I remember, this is, I'm sharing here. Of course, I generally don't like to share, my family's story, etc., because out of respect, because we are in a digital world, and they are their own people, they have their own identity. So I won't, divulge anything, too much. But in general terms, I remember when a family member was suffering really badly. And I remember asking for help, and it was a long time ago, around 20 years at least, and asking for help because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this is all about. I was quite young myself, had young kids, but I was like, what do I do? And the answer that came to me was just like, maybe there's something wrong. Something wrong, and it was just that kind of thing. Maybe it's faith, and it really just made me pull away and just go inside more, and we know that it's not very healthy. If you're only going inside and you're not getting the space, or you're not getting the tools and tips and everything that we have now. Wow, so many of us are trained in mental health and being able to help people move forward, leave the past behind and look and get excited about a future that makes them feel like, yes, all juiced up for life. But we didn't have that, and that was hard. But, not to complain, I lived through it like yourself, Glenda, and I'm sure you learned so much from it. It made me resilient.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. But I like to talk about it because I see a lot of families that are troubled, that are struggling, that need to know that there's help somewhere, that there's understanding, that there's an ear. And maybe, there's a lot of things through the years as I have grown up, and now my siblings are still alive and well. And but all the things that I have learned about coping and teaching them to cope and building their own powers and so for me, I look at it I'm an open book. I believe that things happened to me for me so I could help others.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what it's for me. Like, as I struggled, and through those years, I had nobody. Like, it was funny because I just went to a focus group the other day to talk about because we're trying to increase our medical help right now with people with mental illnesses in Canada. And so I was asked to attend this focus group because never mind have I dealt with my brother's mental challenges, but I also lived through a time where my mother had dementia, and what I had to deal with and to go through it all. And through all of this, I've dealt with everything by myself. It wasn't until the last 10 years or so where I finally got some type of support, but physically, mentally, emotionally, and everything, I just dealt with it all by myself. I found my own ways. And I also felt that at that time that people don't need to be by themselves so much.
Yeah.
The reason I went through it now through my life is so I can help others to transition their families with even just a little bit more of heart and understanding, so it wouldn't be as much of a struggle as what I went through.
Oh gosh, no, absolutely. And I could really hear it in your voice as well. And you kind of repeated it a lot, and you said you just had to get through it. And, that just, in my mind, I'm just thinking, not that you're my client or anything, but I'm thinking, gosh, because as we know that if we don't express our feelings, if we suppress it, the body expresses it, right? In terms of migraines, eczema, whatever it is, binge eating and things like that. And I was just wondering, how did you cope? Did you just sort of walk it out, exercise it out? What did you do?
It depends on like I said, I was born in it. So I started as a child, and a lot of stuff was pushed down to me. And because, I didn't have the needs, and my parents, and this is one of my biggest messages for people that are listening out there who have children with any form of special needs. If you have a child, like I had, my two siblings had special needs and my sister and I didn't. And I was always a very strong child and very headstrong too. My father would tell me to do something and I went and did it my way, because that was just Glenda's way of doing things. But so, I would just push things out, but, it was always, don't worry about her, she's strong. And, but the thing is one of the things I want to put out there to people is, even if your child is what we call in the normal stage. And I hate the word, but just for a lack of use of words, everybody has needs. Everybody needs to be seen, heard, loved, touched, and hugged, whatever. Everybody needs that, no matter whether they have a special need or not. And, when children that don't have that, it actually hinders them in their own journey of their life as well.
Definitely. I can really resonate with that. And the words that you just said, that's what my eldest said to me. Because we would usually say, I wouldn't worry about her because she's 21 and she's doing medicine. She's just finished her 3rd year, but she's on her 4th year. But she would say, I know it's a tough course, but credit to her. And she just says, you always act as if you don't need to worry about me. Like I don't have to, because I'm doing well academically, if you know what I mean. That really opened up my eyes and it made me realize and see her, because like you said, she's just a child. She just has that need. She needs to connect. She needs to know that she can lean on us. She needs to know that she can put the weight down. And, obviously that's what's so good about this work. The more work I do for other families, the more I can do on myself and my family. And it's a real beautiful give and take. But something else came to my mind when you're speaking, Glenda, and I think it's, I have an Instagram business account and I get lots of messages because lots of younger people are on there, right? So I have lots of teens that will message me and they'll say, could you please work with me? But they're under the age of 18. So of course, according to my license, I can't, do that. I need to have permission. But then they'll share with me and they'll speak up and, they're self-harming. They're doing so much. And I will give as much as I can, but I'll say to them, would you share this with your mother? Have you shared this with somebody that you could, that you trust? And it's just like the idea of being able to speak up and to be able to share it. They just can't do it, And I said, look, give me the number and I'll connect. But unfortunately, it just doesn't happen. And, all I can do is worry and just think and, send a little prayer and think, what's going on? And, so there's all this, it's very hidden. It's very hidden. It's, from the outside, everything looks fine. But I guess these conversations are to really sort of promote, are they really fine? Is everything okay? Have a little conversation, lean in, look for signs. And, is it always just about academics? If they're doing well at school, then everything's fine. And unfortunately, that is a bit of the yardstick. It really is that, they're at school, they're doing this, they're doing that, then everything's fine. They're part of the debate society. They're part of, some sort of sports. I mean, obviously, those things are wonderful. They're great because they really give balance to the young person. But I think there's signs there, and I think caregivers know. They know it's in the family. Maybe they choose not to see it. I don't know.
And that's such a good point. You talk about sports, but sometimes sports for my family, there was so much competition in the basketball and the volleyball for the girls. And I think it was my youngest daughter's freshman year, and I found a card in her room, and it was a suicide hotline. And if you don't think that panics a mother when you see that, that scared me. And I had to, almost force her to talk to me. And it was because we had gone through a divorce with her dad. But a lot of people, when you're from a family that looks good from the outside, you've got the house, you've got the car, the kids have trophies and plaques. It's almost as if what do you have to worry about? You have this and you have that. So there's that extra pressure of, gosh, maybe I'm not supposed to feel this way. And so for my youngest, when she brought that home and she told me, she goes, there's just sometimes I feel like no one listens to me. There's sometimes I feel like I don't deserve this. It was really traumatic until I told her, I said, I can't help you unless you talk to me. And if you won't talk to me, I'm going to have to take you to someone you will talk to. So kids, I'm going to say, starting like maybe 6th, 7th grade, all the way through college, there's so much pressure on these young kids these days to get the grades, to perform, and it's almost like it's too much at times. It's really too much. their little brains aren't even connected, and everybody's pushing them to do this and to do that.
I can
And
share some stories that just made me laugh when you said that. I had a boy, he's only 11, from the States, so I'm not sure what grade he was in, but he was, he's a good guy, he's sensible, he does chores, he fights with his little sister now and again, but he's generally, he's doing well. But he got his scorecard, and Mom rang me up because, as part of the program I speak to the parents as well. And she's like, "Oh, Samina, he got got his report card, and I'm really unhappy." And I said, "Why? What happened? What was the grade?" He got a B in Spanish. And I just thought,
a B, oh my gosh.
and the thing is, I know we have to laugh, but the thing is I said, did you say that in front of your son? Does he know? Because that's what it's about. It's about when you open the report card and your face says, or whatever, they are now internalizing that, and he just feels that he's just not good enough. He's just not good enough. I did this. Dad never said anything. It's not even noticed. And then I have another story, which really, I still remember this, but in my days as a teacher in high school, so many parent-teacher associate meetings. And this girl did so well. She did really well in her exams, 90%, like 90%, 90, fantastic. And the father said, "Well, what happened to the other 10%?" And, this girl she's an introvert. She's not, like me, loud and bubbly and whatever. And you could see just it all over her face, like, "Oh, I didn't do that." And can you imagine that child now, if she doesn't have any intervention, just growing up as a 40-year-old, 50-year-old woman, just always feeling that she just can't, she's not good enough. And she'll just hold herself back from promotions, hold herself back from opportunities. And, that's what gets me excited about this work. It's worth it, to do this with the young ones. It doesn't take that long. They've only been alive, 15, 13 years, compared to us with so many decades that we have to, shed all those, limiting beliefs, etc. But for them, they really have to, they really do have a fighting chance.
Oh, thank goodness, because, some of the things that from my generation that get stuck in you over a period of time, the judgment or the embarrassment or anything that happens that defines you as not up to par or not living up to your potential, anything like that, that gets buried so deeply sometimes that we don't even understand it's there. We have no idea our subconscious is running that program based on something that might have been said 10, 15 years ago. We have no idea why we feel unworthy or unloved or why we're not capable of relationships. We have no idea.
Unfortunately, what comes up a lot in the sessions, it's, of course, caregivers, parents, grandparents, something, but most of the time it seems to be set at school. There's always like a school scene, and it's generally maths, like a maths lesson. They can see themselves at the blackboard, and they need to do a question, and they're just like frozen, and they can't complete it. And then the maths teacher does, rolls their eyes or like, "What's wrong with you?" and gives them that look, that look. And it's just so difficult for them, and they just internalize it. Or nobody says anything. They see the result, and their best friend next to them says, "I thought you were smart. How did you get?" "Oh, I got more than you." And it's just a tiny little thing, but it can snowball, and it just becomes cemented. And like I say, it's like tagged and imprinted upon their subconscious, so that it becomes a belief. They then start to have that negative bias where they're looking for situations in their life to support that belief. "See, you're not good at maths," or "See, you're not good at this," or "You're not good at that." And it is sad. It is sad. And I think as parents, we can do a lot. There's no place for judgment. There's no rule book, right? When we have our kids, we do whatever we can. We do the best that we can, and so have our parents, etc. But if we can just sort of really lean into, like, when you get the report card and that young boy got the B, and the parent could have asked, "How do you feel about that B?" He would have said, "I'm really proud of it. I'm really, wow, I got a B. I didn't think I would." Then she could say, "Wow, that's amazing. Good on you." And that's it. And maybe she could have, "Oh, have I frozen?" I don't know if I froze for a bit.
just for a sec.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe she could have said, you know what, if you're happy with that grade, that's great. But do you think you could have improved it? Do you think you put enough effort into it? You could do that if you want, but by doing that, that will really just cement in the child that, okay, I'm on a good path and I'm happy with it. Rather than looking for this unimaginable, who gets 100%?
Let's even break that down even further as a parent. And I know because I was very, like I spoke about myself, whereas when I was in high school, my parents never even saw report cards for years on end. They never asked, they never saw. I used to forge signatures, and that was the end of it. It shows you where, I wasn't looked at, but it's because they were busy with their own world and that. As a parent, though, because I've seen what I've done and I've talked to other parents and helped other people through in the parenting courses, start to get involved with your child on a daily basis. When they come home, see what the homework that they're doing, where are they struggling, like sit down, be with them. As homework in my house was always at the kitchen table. I know as computers came into being, more kids have gone off into their bedrooms. I believe in the kitchen table. I have meals every day when my kids are around. Meals every day was a family event. We sat at the kitchen table. Nobody went and sat off on their own. The family unit is breaking down. Let's start creating that family unit again. Let's create the conversations. What's happening in school? Where are you strong? Where are you weak? Right? Watch how your kids are struggling. Sitting down at the kitchen table with them and watching them start to do their homework can be a real indicator where things are before the report card even comes.
I know. And the problem is, because I did this whole thing in my group about conversation at the dinner table and I had to make it flow. And one of the things that is the problem is the teens don't want to have family dinners, because when they're there, they're like sitting ducks for, have you done your room? Have you cleaned this? What's the latest? What are you going to do about college? And all of that barrage, which is why they basically isolate themselves in the bedroom, because as soon as they come out, then it's just like bang, 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 and that's how they feel. They feel like it's, so then I came up with all these sort of
change the conversations,
which is like on suitable topics which will make them, what's the word, like, ask them about the films, about what's the latest TikTok, something that they can relate to. It doesn't have any sort of emotion, it doesn't have any sort of judgment, comparison, criticism attached to it, and it just makes them feel like, yeah, okay, I can talk about that. And practice with that, small things, and then roll it out to bigger things, and then hopefully they feel like they have a voice. They feel that they have
the part, what I totally love is taking your child and asking them to teach you something, because then they're the ones who are empowering you, and that gives them a very different world of looking at things, because now they're the ones, the strong ones, and you're the weak one. It really changes the dynamics of it when you're in that form.
Yeah, just about makeup. Like my youngest, she's just turned 15. She loves makeup. So I said, okay, go on then, Hannah, just do it. She loves doing it, and oh god, the prodding and poking. But yeah, and that's something that she's interested in. So it makes sense, to let her sort of. I said, okay, let's go shopping. You can buy all the fancy products and things that I probably wouldn't even know how to use, but at least that makes her happy. But Nicole, something I felt like you shared something really sort of sensitive there about your daughter. How did it sort of end? Like when you found the card about the suicide prevention, what happened next?
Well, I said, I told her, I said, seriously, you need to talk to me about this. I said, why do you have this? Where did it come from? And what are you feeling inside that makes you feel that this is something you need? And what it boiled down to is due to the divorce of her dad and I. It was a really bad situation in which I found out my ex was cheating because her iPod Touch was synced to his phone. So there's this little 6th grade girl that got all these messages, all these pictures, all these sex, and she really couldn't process it. And I remember telling her dad, at the time it was like 6th grade, and this was like 9th grade when I found the car. But I said, you need to talk to her. You need to tell her the truth about what you did and why, what it means to you. How is it going to affect her? Well, he didn't. What he did is he went into how hard his childhood was and how his mom committed suicide and everything. And so nothing was remedied. This is because it was a time when he had lost his job. He had a tattoo parlor, and that was something we never even thought of. We were in lending, we were in real estate. He took her behind the tattoo parlor, sat her down, didn't let her answer any questions, but went on, instead of helping her, martyred himself in terms of, your mother didn't give me any attention. Your mother did this. Your mother did that. So it got totally turned around on a parent. So over time, nothing was ever resolved with her. And I never knew that, because she told me dad had talked to her and she was okay. And what it turned out, that all these years, from 6th grade to 9th grade, there was sadness, there was depression, there was remorse, there, everything you could think about. And, her dad gave her attention, but because of being a narcissist, it was not
like transactional.
Yes. And so finally, we did talk, we did get through it. She admitted to me that, she took it, but she was more depressed than anything, but really didn't feel that severe, but she wanted to keep it just in case. So we did. It was not easy, but she did not want to talk to me. And I'm like, I am not going away until I will not walk away from this until we have a conversation, or I take you to someone to have a conversation with.
Recently dealt with 14-year-old who tried, I don't know if there's a trigger warning on the show, but tried to commit suicide twice. And, it was really difficult for the child. It was really difficult for the mother. And I think she did similar to yourself. She just, and the thing is, it was really good because she didn't make it about herself, which would have been really easy to do. Like, oh my God, what's going on? My baby. She didn't make it about herself, which was really good. She did try to focus as much as she could on the child. But of course, as moms, we're dying, when that happens, it's like, there's so many emotions. And I really hope that you got your support as well. And what I wanted to share is what the teen said. She said, I go, why did you take the overdose, etc. And she said, I just wanted it to stop. And I said, what's it? Need to be clear. And she said, just that feel, all the sort of shouting and arguing and sort of innuendos, they pick up all that nuances.
Yes.
With this bickering, this silent treatment, cold shoulders, they pick it all up. And what was happening to her, she just felt very because at the end of the day, a child is 50% mom and dad. Now, when mom and dad have, of course, issues, then they take that upon themselves. Well, if dad's not good, then that means I'm 50% not good as well. And then they start to feel disconnected from themselves. And that's where the problem is. And that's where they start taking it out on themselves, because obviously they're not going to blame their parents. Most of the time they blame themselves. And unfortunately she got that, but she's a lot better now. And I really hope your daughter is as well.
Yeah, she has come out on a very good end of all of this, but it was a couple years to build her up, get her self-esteem, even though she's not the type that really shows it, as the mother that's been there from, conception to that moment when you can tell when something's going on with your child. The language, the demeanor, sometimes snippy, sometimes happy. And I remember her freshman year, we had moved, so I always took her to her school, and it was a really nice time. Sometimes she would talk and just chatter, like when she was little. She was always my chatty Cathy. Then other times she was very, very quiet, and I respected both. If she wanted to talk, we chatted. She wanted silence, I let her have it. you know, but always dropped her off with love, you know, okay, I love you. I'll see you at 3:15.
That was really hard for you though. I can imagine. And, you know, it's like the mother's face just lights up when they're all back to their normal selves, chatting, and smiling. And your heart does break when you see them really struggling. But, you know, you did the right thing and you just, you know, gave her that space.
Yeah. And, you know, we all need it. And I realize that. And I don't want to interrupt her own space because I don't like someone doing that to me. Very often, I never had anything like depression, but every once in a while I'd get in that mood where I just wanted to be quiet. I didn't really want to talk or have to share. And from me understanding myself, I was able to give her that without, well, what's your problem today? Or you're sure pissy today. Or, you know, I hear a lot of parents doing that and blaming and shaming them. And that's not right.
I am, unfortunately, like this child. I remember I did some program. They had some very final exams and it was called Mindset for Success. And the child was really reached out to me and said, look, I really, you know, I really have so much panic attacks and anxiety. I'm really worried about this exam. You know, I feel like you could help me. Could we have a session? So I reached out to the parent. I said, your child said this, da, 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 da. But she goes, oh, she's just being lazy and over dramatic. There's nothing wrong with her. And that's what I'm dealing with, you know. And I don't know, like I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm thinking, I feel like it is not common enough or easy enough in Black and brown families to talk about mental health. And I'm not sure whether it's easier in your background or not. You know, I couldn't make that claim, but it just feels like that, you know, it's just dismissed so easily. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we don't want to face it. I think we don't. This is a society that, for the most part, doesn't like to talk about things, doesn't like to bring things out in the open. Now, I didn't push when it was something with a boyfriend or something like that, or, you know, something happened at school, unless it was bullying, and then I lost my mind. But you know, something like this had to be addressed because people always say, oh, well, they don't mean it. They don't mean it. Well, you know, they do. There's something in there, you know, and she didn't want to talk about it. So it wasn't like for attention. She was suppressing something and I needed to figure out why. You know? But for the most part, people are, well, why would they do that? They've got everything, you know, they're just spoiled. And it's like, oh, please, that, you know, that has nothing to do with it.
It's because we are in that generation where our kids are in a digital age. And of course, a lot of us do have that sort of income, you know, like if I compare myself to my parents, you know, they were very, very tight. They've come from Pakistan. They had nothing. They're working really, really hard. So they were very tight with their money, etc., so that they could build, you know, what we have. But for us, like we have more money than they did, so therefore we spend more money on our children, and the result is we don't want them to be spoiled, right? So we have that end of the spectrum as well. So, you know, my sort of solution to that is chores. Give them a lot of chores, and you know, I mean, I had my daughter cooked me dinner this week, so I was really happy. So, you know, things like that, you know, it kind of balances it out and makes it.
Yeah. And her father, she's still struggling a little bit with him, even though she's back in Arizona living with him while she finishes school. You know, he'll do things like, you know, I want you to go to counseling to get your self-esteem up. I'll pay you. It's like, well, first of all, you're telling her there's something wrong with her. And you've got her conditioned to, you know, how does she feel about that? Instead of her saying yes or no, he's going to give her money.
It's one child, she's 15. She just said to me, and the other day she said, because I hate that she didn't want to do the work with me. She goes, I hate the fact that my mum didn't ask me, and she signed me up to this program with you. It's like she's hired you to fix me. She goes, I don't need to be fixed. And I can totally understand that, right?
Yeah.
You needed to be in as part of the sort of program. She needed to be on board, right? And buy into this idea. So that was an issue. And then she also said that, I said, well, you know, I went a bit further, and basically she just wants to have more time to connect with her mum. She doesn't like the fact that her mum is buying other people to fix her, if you know what I mean. I think she just needs some one-on-one time with her mum. And have some nice, easy connecting time. Let the oxytocin flow, the bonding chemical, and yeah.
And I told Keely, my youngest, I said, well, here's the thing. I said, when you get your self-esteem back, because she's pretty good with that. I said, and when you find your voice, you can use it to tell your dad to stop manipulating you.
It's hard, isn't it? They're just, gosh, what are they supposed to say? Yeah, sorry, Glenda, go ahead.
So when we have, we've got two sides now. We have a mother or father that is doing whatever they're doing, and then we have the child. Let's start, if people are watching, what can we suggest to the parent so that the child gets heard, the child isn't brought down to just what you're saying of the child being put into places what they don't like, so that the child learns to use their voice, and for the child on the other side to come back and be able to say things without feeling that if they say something that they're not going to be punished in one way or another.
Absolutely. There's so much there. It's, that sort of conversation to be able to speak. And I think, first of all, moms need to realize, take away the guilt, because they do worry. They do have so much guilt on themselves. I must get this right. I'm an educator, or I'm so clever, and I'm this and I'm that. I should be able to do this. It can't be that hard. So taking that sort of pressure off themselves is better, because then they can just be a human being. And I think once I started to take that pressure off me, and that was the first thing, taking that pressure off my shoulders. The second thing was not worrying what other people thought, not to worry, because there was so much judgment. Oh, the amount of judgment. I mean, in a way, everyone expected my eldest to go into medicine because I was head of science, right? So I had that science background. It wasn't a shock. It was to me because it came from her, because I thought she was going to go into computers or something, but that's what she wanted to do, and she chose it, and good for her. But it wasn't, everyone expected it. And then when my son, he was going down the academic route, and I know it's different in the States and in Canada, but it actually he wasn't happy. It wasn't suiting him. It wasn't bringing out the best in him. So we sat down, he was around 17, and we said, okay, what do you want to do? And he's an artist. He loves art, right? And so he's gone down that path, and he's now he finished with graphic design, and that's what he's going to do. So it's like, don't worry about what people think. When people heard that, there was so much judgment. There was so much, honestly. But I felt, because I had done my work, I was fine. It didn't bother me. It didn't bring me down. I didn't really care. It's good. And I think when we can get into that position where you don't care, it's just about you and your child, you and your family. And then, that connection, like I said, oxytocin, it's really going to make them feel calm. And when they are calm, because oxytocin's gone high, bonding will happen. And then they're going to let that, their guard down. And they start to actually listen to your guidance and your wisdom. Because, of course, you've got lived experience, you've got wisdom, you've made mistakes, you know what kind of works and what doesn't. Of course, we should try to share some of it with our children. Of course, they're going to make their own mistakes. We know that. But that's the whole point, isn't it? That we impart some wisdom to them and some sort of guidance. And they're going to do that, but only when you now don't care what other people think. You've done some work on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Take off that, weight of guilt and expectation on yourself. And then I guess there was another one. I've kind of alluded to it throughout the conversation, criticism. I feel your words have to just flip it around. Of course, you're worried about the grade and you want them to get a great job, right? You like right now, my son, he's finished graphic design. I'm so you're always wanting to sort of, have a conversation. Okay, so what's next? And, these sort of things. And he's like, Mom, it's summer, not now. And you just have to sort of respect that. But, be careful, flip it. Don't be critical and say, oh my God, you haven't got a job. You haven't made a decision. You haven't. Don't do that. Flip it on the other side and say, so what are your thoughts? What would you like to do? It's going to open them up. It's going to make them feel seen and heard, like you said, Glenda. And, only good can come from that, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think if they feel a safe ground where they're not going to be shut down, because a lot of kids feel when they're talking to their parents, they're shut down because it's you've got to, if you're especially in a and a family where there's a lot of professionals, it's kind of a lot of times saying, it's the undertone that that they're expected to be following in their family's footsteps. And we bring our children into this world so that they can be who they're supposed to be. And as whether you're a professional or an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. But if you can bring out whatever your child, like a talent within them, then that's where they're going to flourish.
Absolutely.
But
And I think, and it's so powerful. Now I feel so powerful now as a mom. Like when I take the example of my son, just, not stressing, not worrying, just knowing that as long as he is passionate, he's learning some skills, he'll monetize those skills. And there is a huge world for them, especially now that obviously I've moved into entrepreneurship and, seeing the other side, it doesn't have to be university. Otherwise, the fact that he said he didn't want to go to college, we call it university, that would have been like what? And I'm sure when my dad comes back from Pakistan, because we have a family of educators, he will be like, what's going on? I'm sure he'll want to know what's happening. But yeah, it feels good. It feels really good. It feels authentic. I think that's it.
Well, I think that, sometimes if we learn to sit back and not say anything and let our children lead, you'll see a lot of a different sort of person come through. And, we can't always be what we want. And it's really important sometimes. And listen, I learned the hard way. I learned from from my son, an 18-year-old that took off and went to go find himself in the US, and then came back many years later. But through that time, there was still connection and communication through that time. But what was taught was, by the age of 18, the world is your oyster now. I can't do anything because you're legally now an adult. And all I could do is I gave you the tools, and now you're set free to do it with what you want. And it's that was a huge lesson for me. And they have to spread their wings. And, as parents, we want the best for our children, but sometimes we just got to let things sort of fall where they may.
Definitely. But you're very brave, Glenda. I think I'd like, no, don't do that. Because mine's 19 now. So I'm sure, and it's true. I really do feel like, I know, like my eldest has said that as soon as she finishes medicine here, she doesn't want to work in. We have the local NHS. She wants to go to Australia. I think there's amazing opportunities. So she wants to do that. And I'm just thinking, like, what? Australia? It's just, I said, I'll come. I work online. I can come too.
Yeah, you know what they just do. Whatever is meant to be will meant to be. Like for my son, I didn't convince him. When we talked about when he was going after he did his undergrad, about what he wanted to do, and I just suggested that a law degree would open more doors for him. And I was looking as what was going to be the better of two degrees, between an English degree and a law degree, right? And I suggested a law, and I suggested why, but I then stepped back, and he said, I don't want to be a lawyer. And I said, that's fine. You don't need to be. You can do what you want to do. The degree will just open more doors for you. That's all I'm saying. And you make your decision. Today he's now a lawyer, but I didn't. It wasn't my decision.
Yeah, and it can't be, can it? And I know lots of families do it that way, but I just feel that something sort of dies in the child, and their sort of dream, desire, energy, it kind of just subsides, doesn't it? And to make room for the parents' dream.
Well, that's it, right? And that's the whole idea is of bringing the sparkle out of your child. There is nothing nicer in this world. There's a saying that I use all the time is you're only as happy as your saddest child. Because when your child is sad, whatever child it is, it weighs on your heart all the time.
Yes, very true.
And so when you see that your children or child, whatever, is in a good spot mentally, physically, everything, you are in a good spot as well, because, allowing that child to do what they want and bring it out is the dream of life to me.
It is, Glenda. I mean, honestly, like you said, I wouldn't go into too much detail about my own, but definitely, without a doubt, I would sell every single thing that I had, all the money in the world, just give it away. If I could have, strong mental health for all my children, absolutely.
Mhm.
It is priceless. It really is, and I really do believe it's linked to self-worth as well. I know, like you mentioned self-esteem, Nicole, I think I'm sorry, the father mentioned it, isn't it, about self-esteem? But self-worth is so important, and and it's God-given. It's not it's not, there's no value on it. It's priceless. And for them to realize that and step into that, it just means that they always have the remote control to their happiness. No one can switch it on and switch it off or dim it or anything like that. I think that's really important.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of like dimming their lights. We don't want that to happen.
Absolutely.
So what message would you send out to a teenager, even a young adult? It's
Yeah, I
that
do.
is doing this. What message or messages would you send out to them if they felt that they're not able to use their voice and they're not shining their lights?
I mean, in the last part of your question, I'll deal with in a minute. But the first part is, I really want them to see this as a message of hope. That sometimes I explain their life is like the minutes on a clock, and they've only had perhaps the first 10 minutes on the clock. Their childhood. If they didn't like their childhood, it was stinky, it was rubbish, it was, whatever it was, toxic, poisonous. It was only 10 minutes. You've got 50 minutes left on the clock. Just look at what you've got. You can make it count. Don't go into the next 10 minutes looking back and living there. And I think that's where real power is, because then they understand that they can really get into the driving seat of their life and they can move forward. And I really want them to know that. Now, in how do they do that? They need tools, don't they, to reframe, confidence anchor, subconscious rewiring, so many things that they can use. The audio recordings, though, to basically, change their inner voice from inner critic to inner coach. So it's always coaching them forward, and it's very positive and bespoke for them. Those things are brilliant, I think. But I'm sure, all therapy, all types of counseling, all types of therapy work. It's just everyone's different and they need to sort of find what suits them. Yeah.
And their learning abilities.
Yeah, like some things will hit quickly. Like I've had lots of sort of moms who come to me. They've done different things like CBT, psychotherapy, or EMDR, and then they've come to me, and I have like a different brand of. It's called RTT. It's Marisa Peer. I think you put it in the bio, and it's a form of hypnotherapy. But I like that because I find it very fast. So it sort of, and sometimes it's layers. You have different types of therapy, and you're just peeling off a layer, and that final piece, it just sheds that sort of limiting belief or the past or the trauma, and they're free to move forward with their life. Yeah, so hopefully a message of hope. I do hope that came across. That things are hard, especially post-pandemic. COVID, it's so obvious. I think there's so much research out there how those teens in that sort of age group they didn't get the social skills, did they? They didn't get what everyone else or what we grew up with. So there's a lot there, but there's a lag. Hopefully over time it will get better. But I was just about to talk about mental health services, which are really terrible in the UK at the moment. We have something called CAMS, and I remember one of the mothers just putting a case in signing up, and they called her back and said it will take a year and a half to be able to see a therapist one-on-one, and a year and a half. The child's 15. She's going to be what, 16 and a half or something. Yeah, and this was the suicide attempt as well. So like, what's going on?
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, it's happening everywhere around the world, which doesn't make it any better. But you know, the whole idea, if anybody is watching and you're having thoughts where you're just not happy, you know, reach out. Is there somebody in school, a guidance counselor, a special teacher? You know, I remember my kids always had one special teacher that they seemed to, that they connected with better than others. Whoever, just go and get some type of an ear of somebody that can listen to you out, because that's all sometimes it's needed. And of course, you can go off to your doctor and all the rest, but we're saying that to get help sooner rather than later is really the important thing today. You know what? You deserve to be heard. Your voice and your words mean a lot. So it is your time. Reach out to anybody that you know that could possibly lend some type of support. And that's really what it is right now.
And it's not your fault. I think this is the thing. They all go inwards and they blame themselves, thinking you're different to everybody else. That's why I don't deserve good things. You know, everything bad happens to me. Look at my family, you know, things like that. And of course, I'm not enough. That comes up a lot. And it really isn't that. You know, I always give this example. They were born confident, super confident. When they wanted to learn how to walk, what did? They took a few steps, stumbled. Did they stay down? No, you got up and you kept going. So come on, you can do this.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So, Samina, thank you so much for joining us today. You're just a wealth full of information. Below this video is Samina's link, which you will be able to contact her if you would like to talk anything further. Of course, Nicole and I, we always put our link there. So, you know, we're also there to help you up on your journey, or to give you some guidance, or to just be an ear to listen to. That's what we're all here for. So learn that you're worth it. You're worth the ask. So it's time to reach out for yourself, because we have to help ourselves, number one.
Absolutely. It starts with us.
And it ends with us as well. That's the whole thing. It's a full circle. Nicole, what type of wisdom would you like to bestow upon us today?
You know, one of the things for me when I had my kids, I kind of looked back at myself, and I was always extremely independent, and I didn't want anyone telling me what to do. My kids were a little different because they always came to me for advice. And what people don't realize is we don't own our children. We don't own them at all. They need to own themselves. I would always help them through something or talk them through something. But the question was to them, what do you feel is right? What do you want? How does that make you feel? Would you rather do this, or would you rather do that? And you can't. So I saw so many parents force sports on children, force dancing on their kids, you know, and I had one dancer and one athlete, but they chose. And when you choose what you love and what just enlarges your heart because you're so happy with it and yourself, that's when you're going to get good results. That's when the magic's going to happen. It's when they realize that they are independent, they get to make choices. If the choices don't work out, that's okay. We just reframe or we pivot. And so that's what I would like parents to remember.
I love it. It's perfect. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Remember, we're not here to be perfect. We're human beings. We're here to just be with what we need to be. Whatever feels good in your heart is what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Just leave the judgment, leave the shame and the guilt. And it's very freeing to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I mean, it was just an absolute pleasure having you today. Time goes by fast when you're having a good time, and I appreciate you bestowing some wonderful wisdom upon us today. Thank you all.
For having me. Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you, Nicole, as well.
You too. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all.